I welcome to the floor David Hunter Bishop. How are you,
Thank you,
David?
Nick.
Are you well?
I'm fine. I'm doing very well. Thank you. And thanks for all the people who are showing up to hear this presentation. I much appreciate that. I'm very grateful. Um, let me start by talking a little bit about my upbringing. I lived in New Jersey. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I took a fairly conventional boomer style arc to my life from the beginning. School, university, career, marriage, family. I was very conservative, and I never really stepped too far outside of those parameters. I was a good student in high school. I loved sports. I attended public schools. I spent 18 months at the United States Naval Academy, and then resigned, worked odd jobs for a while, and eventually was graduated from Temple University with a degree in American Studies. I mean, it all sounds nice and idyllic, but it wasn't necessarily. It was during that time I started drinking, and my Italian neighbors, my friend who lived behind me, his father was a first generation Italian immigrant, and he had barrels of wine in his basement, and we'd go down there and drink the wine straight out of the tap when he wasn't looking. So I developed a pretty good, in my athletic years in high school, I developed a pretty good drinking habit. I never smoked. This was in the late 1960s. I never smoked pot then. The first time I smoked pot was when I was in the Navy. After the Army-Navy football game in Philadelphia, I went to visit my friends at Temple University who were living in the dorm. And of course, they had lots of pot there. And I don't remember smoking it. They said I did, but I was pretty wasted at the time. And that was the first time I smoked pot. And this becomes a recurring theme throughout my life, and substance abuse. And it plays a large, a very, very important role in the most important change that I made in my life. So soon after I was graduated from Temple University, I was hired to write and take photos for a chain of weekly newspapers, and that began my newspaper career in southern New Jersey. And I was successful at that, and I became an editor at the newspaper, and I was accepted into a group study exchange program with the Rotary Club, which sent me on a trip to Australia, and no, that was New Zealand, that trip. And we went around, we did homestays with people, and learned all about the country. And it was great, and it really started to make me think about travel. I did a little bit of travel in the Navy too, when they sent me on a cruise ship, training vessel, and that went to Australia and New Zealand and back to Waikiki, and that was, and I had leave in all those places. So I really loved that. I love standing on the ship and seeing the horizon on the water, 360 degrees, just amazed me. And things like that, and just being able to walk through the streets of Auckland and see the sights of Sydney, and come back and lie on the beaches of Waikiki while I'm in the Navy. I mean, all of these things triggered that wanderlust deep inside me that still hadn't emerged yet, but it was starting to work on me. So when I was working at that newspaper, I'd come back, and it was a November, and it was that cold, bitter rain that you get in November, and just nasty, miserable weather. And I had written an editorial about the Pope and the city of Philadelphia spending too much money on the Pope's visit. It should be non-secular, and it wasn't, and all this and that. And my publisher, who was Catholic, said, "No, you can't run that. You run that and you're fired." And I said, "Listen, I'll save you a lot of trouble." I had Southern California on my mind at that point. I said, "I'm going to quit, and good luck." So my girlfriend and I at that time, we packed her Chevy Nova with everything that would fit in there, and we sold everything else, and we did a road trip across across the country to Southern California. I mean, we stopped in Laguna Beach. We both got jobs there. I was lucky enough to get another job as an editor of the local weekly newspaper in Laguna Beach, and we stayed there for 9 years, and we had a great time. While we were there, we went to Belize, and at the beckoning of a friend who was who we met in Laguna Beach, and he's from Laguna Beach, but he was a Vietnam vet, and he was hanging out in the jungles of Belize, and he started a guest house there, and he invited us down. We went down there. We spent 2 weeks. We had such a good time. We were so enchanted with the tropical life that we came back to Laguna Beach and started looking for a new location, and by what I later deemed the gods of travel magic, one Sunday morning, I find a small classified ad in the Los Angeles Times for an editor for a magazine on Maui. I said, "Holy man!" I said. So I applied and I got it just like that. It was amazing. So we moved to Maui, and that was the start of almost 30 years of life in Maui. We started our family there. That job ended quickly because these people didn't know what they were doing, and so then I got a job on the Big Island of Hawaii, and that was another newspaper job, and that's where I worked for 27 years. So I definitely had a developing substance abuse problem during all this time, and took it to Hawaii and had it there. But of course, I was able to work. I was doing my job, but I was a chronic pot smoker. Alcohol wasn't necessarily the problem, but I was a chronic smoker of weed. And what happened was that over the period of 40 years of smoking weed, I developed this serious lung disease. I didn't know it at first, and I was for years just huffing and puffing and getting serious bouts of bronchitis and asthma, and while I was in Hawaii, I knew I was having serious problems when I would see myself jumping rope for exercise at home with a big long spliff hanging out on my lower lip at the same time. And I knew I had a problem, but I still liked my state of denial at that point. So anyway, that was my early life, and I worked at that newspaper for like I said, a long time, 27 years. I had a lot of grief and remorse in my life from really some pretty horrible deaths in my family, my parents, and with cancer. And my brother with the same rare cancer that my father had. It was just, and so I had a lot of demons in my head, and my marriage was failing, and lots of other things that I was having problems with, and I didn't get them addressed well enough, and I thought I could deal with it, and I didn't. But then, so that all led me to the. I was also fired. I was also a union representative in the newspaper at the newspaper, and toward the end of my career, I was fired for doing my job as a union representative on the floor of the workplace, and my colleague, best friend, was also fired. He took my place. They fired him too, and then and that was over doing legitimate legal work, and we were co-plaintiffs in the suit against the newspaper, which took 7 years to adjudicate. So we were out of work for 7 years. I managed to get some decent jobs during that time, and he got some jobs too. But it was a very, very, very difficult time. And at the end of that period, I went back to work. After we won, after 7 years, we won, and we were offered our jobs back, and we were and with back pay. So we did all right. And my friend didn't go back, but I went back, and I spent 1 more year there because I thought, we worked so hard for this. I wanted to go back just to make the point and just to walk in and say, here I am, give me an assignment. And And so I did that. I knew they were going to make it very, very difficult for me, and they did. And I gave it right back to them as much as I could, with the idea in mind that they would eventually cave. They couldn't fire me because I had a court order from a federal court saying, this guy's going to work there. And so we knocked heads for a year, and finally they did exactly what I thought they were going to do. They gave me a settlement to go away, and that's the day I retired, and in Hawaii, and started thinking that, I thought retirement, I've said this a number of times, I thought retirement was going to be beautiful in Hawaii, but with the shape of my mind at that point, and all the things that were swimming around in my head, and with the abuse of the substances, and I was a mess. I was just a mess, and I was looking down that retirement road, and I saw nothing good down there. The just dead end signs getting closer and closer, and I said, I got to do something. I didn't know what I was going to do. So one night I was sitting at home, in the recliner with the remote control. I'd fall asleep with the remote control in hand in front of the TV. But I was watching travel videos, and I saw one from Guatemala with a animal market on the top of this hill, about 8,500 feet in Guatemala. Really remote location. No tourists around anywhere, but this jam-packed, exciting, vibrant animal market there, colorful. And I said, geez, if I ever wanted to travel, that's the kind of place I'd like to go see. And boom, just like that, the epiphany occurred. That's what you need to do. Get off your ass and get out there and travel. So from that point on, that's what I did. I straightened out the divorce with my wife. I gave her the house, and she left my pension payments alone. And so we agreed on that. And I started selling everything I had, or getting rid of it, or giving it away, or whatever. And everything from then on was focused toward travel. And that was an eight month preparation period for me, because I had a lot of paperwork to do, and just a lot of things to tie up and put together. And but August 1st, 2016, I was on the road. I took a road trip from New York down to Miami, from where I was going to take the plane to my first international destination, which was Guatemala. And incidentally, that animal market, I found that animal market in Guatemala, and I went there, celebrated my 65th birthday there, high up on that hill with all the animals and the people and everything. It was really quite a moment for me. It really convinced me that I'd done the right thing, that I really could travel like that. And but it was, I wanted to go back in Miami. Back in Miami is where I found the S&S Diner, a really small place in the heart of Miami, where the walls are just covered with posters of celebrities and athletes and all kinds of things like that. And high up on the wall, just cockeyed, just hanging on the wall, was this just one like small poster, and it had all these 14 homilies. It, be generous, be kind, and all these things. And I'd always been trying to articulate. For 8 months, I was trying to articulate exactly the kind of person I wanted to be on the road. And this thing encapsulated every one of them. I said, that's it. It was another piece of travel magic. So I adopted those 14. I'd call them now my 14 commandments of travel. And I still have them. I look at them all the time and try to live by those. And that's my philosophy of travel. So these kinds of things happen, and but I was on the road then. I was still having problems. I have selfies that I took on the rooftop of the guest house where I stayed in Guatemala, where I was smoking cigars and joints and drinking beer and And the first few years of my travel life was all party and good times, and I really enjoyed myself, and not until I was getting increasingly sick. I was getting lots of bouts of bad bronchitis and bad asthma, and I always tried to work myself through it. But eventually I went to a hospital, a modern hospital in Malaysia. It was really nice, and they sent me to a pulmonologist immediately. And so somebody's knocking at my door, but I went to this hospital, and this doctor was very good. He was a pulmonologist, and he knew exactly. I told him my story. He knew exactly what I had. He told me it was COPD, and I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's an incurable, progressive disease, and it's fatal." And I said, "Oh, that'll get your attention right away." And so I said, "Doc, okay, so what can I do? Can I travel?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "And exercise is good?" He said, "Yes." And so I said, "Okay, all right. So from that day forward, I quit smoking completely, and I became a anti-smoke, warrior. Wherever I went, I probably a pain in the ass to a lot of people, but I abhor smoke now, and I have nothing to do with cigarettes, tobacco in any way, shape, or form, weed, cigars, all of that. And it's done. And I quit drinking as well. And that was my new life. That was that was the change that changed everything for me. One of the big differences I found in my life post diagnosis was how much money I saved when I wasn't spending money on alcohol and drugs and dating women and and all this kind of thing. And I had so much money left over. I decided, I'm so thankful for being able to have this life, to regain my health, and to be continuing to travel. That I want to get back. I need to get back. And so I had these. So with this extra money, I set aside all of it that I had, and that was extra, and started contributing to organizations, making regular contributions, just setting up payment plans, and it really enriched my life that way. It gave me great satisfaction. I even had a small slush fund where I could just give money to friends that I met on the road who I knew needed it and could use it and were appreciative of it. And so this was just a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of life for me. That was just amazing. So okay. So what happened next was that I wanted to talk about insurance because health. A lot of this, everything has to do. A lot of this has to do with health. And I used to get insurance. My first policy was with World Nomads, and when I first started traveling, and World Nomads is a real stickler for having for you having a home residential address. And I don't have a home. I've never traveled with a home address or a residential address. And so, I told them that when I wanted the policy, I called them up. I talked to them. I said, can I do this? And there was a guy there who said, yeah, I'll show you how. And he worked me through the application process so that I could get so I could get a World Nomads policy. And it was good. I paid premiums for a couple of years, I think, and I never filed a claim until the time I filed a claim, and they called me up and said, "No, you know what? We can't honor your claim." You know why? Because I didn't have a home address. And I said, well, come on, I've been paying you. I told you this right up front. I've been paying premiums for 2 years. You can't tell me that now. And they said, yeah, no, you can't. If you don't have a home address, we can't honor your claim. I said, so we went around and around for this a couple of times on the phone. And then I said, well, I just got to get my lawyer involved in this. And that woke them up. And a couple of weeks after that, they sent me a letter saying, well, we'll offer you, I think it was 6 months worth of premiums. Well, much larger amount than my claim, and so I took that. I was happy to have that, and after that, I just get policies with large large medical payments, like $100,000. If something happens, I'm covered for, and high deductibles. So that if anything catastrophic happens, then I'm covered. But for everything else, I pay out of pocket, because medical care is so inexpensive in most developing countries, the service is good. The doctors are well trained. It's a really good system in most other countries. You can just show up and you get a consultation, and they take good care of you. So I pay for almost all my medical care out of pocket, and I have these large policies, and I don't know really how good they are until I need to file a claim, because you never know how good an insurance policy is until you have to file a claim. So that's a Hobson's choice there. You're not sure you want to file a claim, but you kind of want to. So I've had a lot of experience with insurance, but I don't want to talk too much about that. I've already talked a while, and I do want to answer questions, but I want to go through my notes here. I need to talk about the most remarkable travel excursions that I had, and they occurred this year. In December, last December, I had my 70th birthday, and for my 70th birthday, I gave myself a tattoo, first tattoo I've ever had in my life, and I got it on my forearm. It's from Walt Whitman's song of the Open Road. It's forever alive, forever forward. And that's a real inspiration to me. It's from the song of the Open Road. And at that point, I decided I wanted to go see a permaculture project that I was helping a guy in Zimbabwe fund. I'd never met this guy, but I met him through an organization run by Iona Connor, and I think she's in the audience. And hi, Iona, I'm happy you're here. And she's introduced us, and I was supporting this guy. I would send him money, to build fences or dig wells, and after a while, I was buying goats and cattle for this guy, and I'd never been there. And I said, that's where I want to go. So he was in Mount Darwin in the northeastern part of Zimbabwe, very rural part of the country, and so I had to fly to Harare and then take a 3-hour drive in a car up to Mount Darwin, where they had this developing permaculture farm in this very small village, and they knew all about me, the people in the village, and they were so grateful to see me. They all came out. The entire, government officials came from miles around and everything. There was this big to do for me, and I'm not used to this. And so, and they brought the dancers from the local school who did native African dance performances, and they were all dressed up, and they were doing African dances, performing for me, and I had gifts. I had brought gifts for them, and they act, to them it was like winning the $1 million lottery, getting pencils and pens and notebooks and things like that, rulers for their classroom, and to see this happening like this, and you know, after the formal performances, they were still, you know, all excited, and they were doing these impromptu dances and chanting and singing, and they invited me in, and I'm in there right in the middle of the crowd, you know, singing and dancing with them, and that was one of the best moments of the entire trip, of the entire 6 years. Experiencing that reception in Mount Darwin, Zimbabwe, middle of nowhere, just because these people were so grateful for the little bit of help that I could give them. And you know, that's the kind of thing that I travel for. I don't travel for tourist destinations. I go to some tourist destinations. You know, I'm not a snob about that. I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But my heart is set on going off the beaten path, you know, and offbeat places and places that I decide I want to go and see before I get there. Not places that I've heard about all my life, you know, go see the Eiffel Tower, or, you know, go see, you know, this or that. That's all fine. Everybody goes there. I went to Cairo in that same trip that I went to Zimbabwe. I also went to Cairo first, and there I wanted to see what's known as Garbage City and the City of the Dead. And these are two offbeat places in Cairo that not very many people go to see. Garbage City is an entire community. There's about 90,000 people there that do nothing. The entire community does nothing but collect the waste from the city of Cairo and sort through it and pull out the recyclables and sell them and make the money for everybody in the city, in the neighborhood, to have a job and to support themselves. And it's a great community service. I used to work in waste management, so I understand this. And I went there. And of course, it smells. It smells like a landfill, like any landfill I've ever been to. Cleanest landfill in the United States smells, and not much different than Garbage City. But these people were so friendly. They were the friendliest people I met in Africa, in Garbage City. They were so happy to see somebody like me coming to see what they do. It was just tremendous. I played pool with a group of kids there. I was walking by and I heard pool balls clacking. I looked in and they saw me and they wanted me to come in. And I love pool. And so we were playing pool there one afternoon. It was just so much fun. Such a brilliant way to travel for me. You know, I'd rather do that any day than take an African safari on a group tour. And again, I'm not belittling those, but this is just the way I love to travel. And so you know, these are the kinds of things I love to do. Let's see, what else? Talked about the Mount Darwin, yeah, and okay. Let me go back to how I've changed. The fundamental change was the COPD and the generosity that it sparked in me because I was healed, and the giving lifestyle that I've adopted, which has given me all kinds of benefits in mental and psychological benefits to my life. I'm a much better person now. I'm much more, I think I am much more empathetic and much more tolerant of people in different places than I've ever was in my entire life. It's you know, the mental health outlook of travel is something that needs to be monitored, and people need to understand that there is a mental health aspect to travel. You know, emotions are fragile, and your mind can run away with your thoughts if you let it, but you just need to stay positive, have a positive mental framework and some kind of, like I said, framework for what you do to maintain that positive outlook and keep moving forward. So And I didn't mention this, but I travel solo. You probably inferred that from what I talk about. I'm on the road by myself, and to me, traveling solo is the pathway to your heart and soul. Helps you become a better, stronger person, and on the road and in all aspects of your life. You make your own way. You do what you want to do. You got to make your own plans. You go where you want, when you want. And you never have that feeling. I have tried to travel with partners, and maybe it's me, but it never worked out. And because to me, there's always some one or the other or both, or feeling some kind of resentment or burden by having to cater to what the partner wants. So I don't do that anymore. And solo travel gives me so much time for thinking, for introspection, and learning about myself that it's become extremely valuable. In 2016, when I was recently divorced and getting ready to travel, I was retired, bored, distressed, depressed, and staring down that retirement end game. I wasn't thinking for myself at all. I wasn't. There was no mental activity going on in terms of what are you doing and how are you doing? How are you living your life? And so all of these things, solo travel helped me put all of these things in place and figure out how to deal with them and where they compartmentalize them, not necessarily forget them. I've got a lot of things in my head that I bring out every now and then and contemplate and think about them. But giving them so much thought allows me to move on, to put them in their place and to move on. And I'm much better for it. The road gets rocky sometimes. I've had my ups and downs, but I think it's important to hold to the idea that there is no such thing as a misadventure in travel. They are all adventures. Some good, some not as good as others. And so, I try to keep that in mind. Things happen. I've had some bad things happen, but you just keep moving forward, and everything will be all right. Now I'm writing a book about my journey into retirement. I'm calling it a coming of old age story. I started at age 64, and like I said, recently celebrated my 70th birthday. In December, I'll celebrate my 71st birthday, but I'm still on the road, still moving. And, and I'm really happy with the way things are turning out. I just got a couple of more things. One more thing I've also done is become more of an activist for the causes I believe in. I speak out more and on issues that seem important to me, and I write and express opinions and this kind of thing I didn't do. And it's a funny thing because in journalism you don't do that. You have a career in journalism. They don't want you showing partisanship or anything like that because it might show up as a bias in your writing. And so I never did that. Now I do that, and it's a liberating feeling to be able to not worry about what your viewpoints might mean in the outside world. I mentioned to Luke earlier that I went to a memoir writing workshop with Rolf Potts, the vaunted writer of so many great travel books, Vagabond's Way for one, which was recently published. And he quotes Eleanor Roosevelt there in saying that she said, "The purpose of life is to live it, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experience." And that's what I try to do. That sums up what I try to do. And now I'm seeing the promise of the future, the renewed life, and not forgetting the fact of my own mortality, but I make sure that I take full advantage of the gift that I've been given while I have it. So I want to make sure that let's get to the Q&A. Yeah, what do you think, Luke?
Oh, amazing. Yeah, absolutely. We've got loads of questions coming for you. And I'm just, you could talk for another hour and I'd be there with you. You're so engaging and so many great stories, and
Yeah,
such
I haven't got anything else.
positivity for it. That's the overarching thing, you know. So I've got a load of questions here that I've copied down. Whilst people have been, whilst David's been speaking there, if there are any more questions that occur to you, pop them in the chat, and we will work our way through them. If a question has appeared more than once, I've sort of summarized it in one, so you might not hear the exact question you asked, but you'll get a sort of thematic question close to what you asked. If I haven't done a very good job of that, let me know, and I'll have another go. Okay. Firstly, and I think this is, how much time passed from the retirement to you going? What did you have to do in order to sort of make preparations? Because there's all this sort of get up and go attitude, isn't there? People say you just have to get up and go, but actually there are practical things, aren't there, that needs to be happening, including the insurances and all the other bits and bobs that you touched on. How long did that take, and what was that list of things like?
Well, I retired toward the end of 2013, and I didn't start traveling until August 2016. So there was a period of nearly 2 years in which I was really struggling. Struggling with the idea of retirement, that this is not working out at all, and what was I going to do? And then I had my epiphany with the animal market, and from that moment on, I mean, they say once you dream once of travel, you're on the road already. And so early in 2016, I was starting to plan, and I was just reading and writing and just trying to figure out what I needed. I didn't have too many people to talk to. I didn't know too many people who were actually traveling at that point, like I planned to do. Just to go all of a sudden go off, solo and roam around. But there was selling stuff and getting rid of all my stuff. You never realize how much stuff you have. I sold my pickup truck, and all of these things have, there's always details of these things that make them a chore. And but what clothes do I need? Do I need a flashlight? I mean, where am I going to stay? Where, how am I going to camp? Am I going to, I don't know. The list is too long even to ponder at this point. But it's just these things, these questions will just pop up in your head as you're planning these trips, and you work it out. It's been a long time now. That's 6 years is a long time, and all the things I've done in the meantime, it's difficult to answer. Sorry.
No, you've answered it perfectly. I agree with you, from the practical things like selling trucks, selling possessions, to sort of where do you go, where do you start? That's clear.
Yeah.
Clearly. Another person has asked, what level of physical exertion do you typically do on your travels? Are you hiking or doing adventurous things, or are you taking a more chilled out life?
Well, I'm chilling out more often now than I did 5 or 6 years ago, when I was much more gung ho. That's just a function of age. I'm here in Tbilisi now for a few months, taking a rest from that rigorous trip that I took. That Zimbabwe trip in Egypt, that also included Zambia, India, and Nepal. And I trekked in Nepal. It was a grueling hike in the Himalayan foothills. I didn't go to Everest. I didn't do Annapurna. I went to a community social hut to hut trek in the foothills, and went and visited villages. And but the hike itself, up and down, a few thousand feet at a time, up and down all day long. And it was warm. I was surprised at how warm it was. I thought it would be cooler there. And fortunately, I had a wonderful guide who helped me if I needed a hand. He always offered it. And so nowadays I'll rest more between trips. I still like to hike. I don't do I don't do any jumping anymore or anything like that. I used to jump off over waterfalls and things like that. I probably wouldn't do that. But I still have a fair amount of energy. I can in the tank. So I do what I can when I do it. I don't hold back. But sometimes I just need to rest. And I think it's crucial to know when to rest and when you need to, and when you can move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important, isn't it? Knowing when to rest and when to actually think, well, I've done this trek in the Himalayas, I'm going to have a couple of weeks now of a bit more sort of slow pace to recover from it. We've had several questions about budgets, money, financial sort of side of things. How do you budget for things? What sort of amount are you used to spending on a daily basis? These sorts of things. Talk us through how you work things on a financial perspective.
Well, I hesitate to tell you how much what my budget is, what my income is, but I have a Social Security pension payment, standard, pretty standard Social Security payment, and a smaller newspaper guild pension payment that I have, and so I have a bank account with an investment banking account with Charles Schwab Bank in the United States. So my pensions are deposited automatically into the Charles Schwab Bank. I can see them, what I have at all times, and I can monitor them every day. So that's how I budget. And I know. If I live, if I spend normally, every month, how much that's going to be. This month I've saved a lot of money. I haven't had any major expenses, and I've been consciously not spending too much on food and drink. I had a big trip. I spent a lot of money. There was a lot of airfare involved in those in this earlier this year. And so, I wanted to bring my accounts back up to where they used to be, just for safety's sake. And if you have $1,500, you can live fairly well in many countries around the world. $15. $1,500 a month.
Yeah. So. Is that sort of a budget lifestyle though, or are you able to live more? Is that you being frugal for $1,500, or is that you going and living?
Not too frugal. I don't know how to give an example. I call myself a budget traveler. So I don't go out I don't stay in hotels. I don't necessarily stay in hostels either. I try to get budget Airbnbs, low cost Airbnbs, things like that. Just stay in guest houses. I do like a private room if I can get it. But I stay in hostels, and there's nothing. I actually enjoy the social aspect of hostels a lot. You meet so many people. You're in these close quarters with them all. When you stay there. So. You meet a lot of interesting people in hostels, but I don't stay there all the time. But so I try not to spend too much on lodging. I try not to spend too much on food. I don't eat at fancy restaurants. I like street food. I find the low cost restaurants that have local food that's really, every place has people with cooks who cook great stuff in a little dive. And so if you can find those places, they're always cheap, and I try to find those places everywhere I go. So it's cheap food, cheap lodging. Those are the keys. And try not to spend too much on airfare. Take buses and other forms of overland transportation. Airfare eats up a lot of money.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So you talked there about insurance and your experience with, I think, Nomad insurance. Is there an insurance company that you now recommend to people?
Well, I like the insurance company that I have now. It's called World Trips, and I pay about $200 a month, I think, and I told you I think it's $100,000 in coverage, and it's a fairly high deductible, which keeps the premium down. Because I don't want to pay too much for the premium. I don't use the insurance that much, and I hope not to. But I've never had to file a claim. And as I said, you don't know how good your insurance is until you file the claim. And so I can't say how good their claims process is or bad. I don't know. That's an unknown. And it's unfortunate. I'm not a big fan of the insurance industry, and they're almost like the like Medicare in the U.S. I mean, they make it so complicated, and they hold everything close to their vest so that you don't understand what's going on. So, I like the policy I have for the cost of the benefits that I have, at least on paper.
Yeah, no, that's answered the question. Thank you. So you've been on the road now for quite some time. Do you have family and friends from your previous life come and join you, or are you just meeting now sort of new travel friends on the way?
No, all of my friends are new travel friends. My youngest son, who's a great adventurer himself, he came and visited me when I was in Peru, and we spent a month together in Peru. We had a great time. But he's a conservationist. He's still in Hawaii. So he's got a job, and so it's not easy for him to get away for long periods of time. My other son's an economist, and so he's more of a white collar worker, and I see them now and then, not too often. That's my family. That's my whole family. And if I want to see my friends, I have to go back to the United States to see them. They don't travel. I mean, it's the same story everywhere, I think. And you go back and visit these friends, and you start talking about your travels, and it just goes right over their heads. They change the subject. They don't understand what you're talking about in terms of world nomad travel. It's just
yeah. Well, that's the beauty of these communities, isn't it?
So I love them. I love them all, but it's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. I appreciate that myself. You talk then about your friends you have to go back to America if you see your friends and you feel like they're sort of on a different page. Do you feel then that people still perceive you clearly as an American citizen when you meet new people, be them locals or other travelers, or does the fact you've traveled for a long time change the way that other people sort of perceive you, do you think?
I don't know.
It's a hard question. It's a good question.
That is it's asking how other people perceive me is difficult to answer. I don't know. I have to be honest. I can't answer that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's a good, as good as answer as any. What are your thoughts then about the future? What do you plan for 2 years or 5 years, whatever? Or do you not plan? Do you just go, right, I'm doing this now, and that's that?
I, yeah, I'm doing this now. I don't usually have long-term plans. I have, this year was an exception, and I bit off quite a chunk with those 6 or 7 countries that I went to earlier this year, and that's why I'm taking a rest now in Georgia. But I'm going to Finland on Tuesday, and I'm going to see the Northern Lights, and I'm going to stay. I don't know how long I'm going to stay in Finland, but then I might come down through some Eastern Europe countries, and I have a friend in Peru I want to see, so I'm going to work my way down to Peru. And the original idea was to go from the Arctic Circle, where I'll be, to the Antarctic, and like to do a longitudinal pole to pole trip. And so it's going to be a slow pole trip, but I hope to get from circle to from the Arctic Circle to the Antarctic. It's going to be difficult to get to the Antarctic because that's expensive. That's a budget buster, big time. I started looking into prices for how much it costs to go to the Antarctic. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. Here has looked into the prices, but it's thousands and thousands. Yeah. It gets into 5 figures for some of those expeditions to Antarctica. So my plan is to go down to South America, Ushuaia, Argentina, Punta Arenas in Chile, and maybe just hang out in those places and chat people up and talk to them, ask them how I might get on one of those boats. See what happens, see what I can do, and see if I can work my way on or make a friend, or maybe tell them I can write a story, or I don't know. It's one way or
you
another.
Never know, do you?
I'm going to try. And if I don't make it to Antarctica, I'm sure I'll have one hell of a time in trying.
You never know, do you? They might say, "Oh, someone's cancelled. There's a place on the boat. It leaves in an hour."
Yeah, anything can happen. You got to believe in the gods of travel magic.
Absolutely, yeah, I totally agree with that. Talking about packing stuff, then, if you're going for such a long trip, how do you pack, or do you not bother? Do you just take what you've got and pick stuff up on the way?
I pick up a lot of stuff on the way. I leave a lot of stuff behind because you can't. I have one large duffel bag, wheeled duffel bag that I carry things around. So I can carry some clothing for different climates in that bag, but not too much. And so I'm carrying everything I own. I carry everything I own with me. So it's something, I've got a backpack and a large, a fairly large backpack, but it will double as a carry-on. And then the very large wheeled duffel.
Yeah.
And so I pack those with as much as I can. I don't like to carry too much, but there's when you go around to as many places as I do, you got to carry different stuff for different circumstances.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you certainly need to.
But I manage.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you do more than manage. Tell me then, do you think you've spoken quite a lot and very honestly about your health, which is thank you for sharing, very personal. Do you find that traveling and the lifestyle of traveling actually improves your health, or does it come with its own challenges because of always being in motion?
In my case, I believe it's improved my health from the mental aspect to the physical, in both ways. Because I stay active, I stay on the move, I do exercise regularly, and eat, I'm eating well, and I'm doing this because of my health problems, which I can't say I've overcome. I mean, the doctor, everything I read about what I have says it's irreversible, it's uncurable, and I have not, in 3 years, I have not had any setbacks or exacerbations, and I'm knocking on wood as I say that, but I feel like I'm a lucky guy, because I take care of myself, and nothing bad has happened. I maintained my health, and I actually think I'm healthier now. I know I'm healthier now than I was before I was diagnosed. And I'm maintaining my health. I'm maintaining that health. I'm not getting sicker from the COPD. I don't know how long that's going to last. And I try not to think about that. I just keep, like I said, my mantra is forever alive, forever forward. Just keep moving forward. All things move to live, and the more they move, the stronger they get.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bruce Lee.
Love it. I love it. I love it. We've just got a couple of questions left, so I'm going to do a last call now for questions. If you've got one, pop them in now. Otherwise, we will start to wrap things up, because we've just gone over an hour, and we try and keep something to time. How do you deal with things like various passports? Then someone has, well, I suppose you have one passport, but how do you deal with using it quite so much and doing things like if that has to be renewed, or you have to apply for a visa for a place? All those technicalities, how difficult or how easy is that?
My first passport was the small one, and I filled that up pretty quickly, and I had to get a new one in Thailand, and you have to go to the embassy, I think, or some office, and apply, and it's a big process. It's a pain in the neck to do it, but you get it. But you can buy a large one now with lots of pages, and so I'm still using the second passport that I got, and I still have a lot of pages left. So I'm not too worried yet about filling that up. But I don't look forward to having to get a new one.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me. That makes a lot of sense. What technology do you carry with you? Phone, laptop?
I have a phone, cell phone, and I have a Chromebook laptop computer, and what other technology? I don't think I have. I think that's it.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. No, I love it. So, David, tell people where they can find you and your blog and information about your book and all that sort of stuff. And I'll post the links in the chat whilst you're doing that.
All right. My blog website is realontheroad.com. RealOnRoad. I forgot the THE. Real on the Road.
I've got it.
It's there. That's on there. It's on the screen now. And so all my contacts are on that website. There's also a newsletter I wish everybody would subscribe to. If you're not subscribed, go to the website, in the top menu bar, just under the header, you'll see newsletter. Hit that, enter your email into the form, and submit, and you'll be on my newsletter subscriber list. I notify everybody first whenever I put a post out on the website, and I have special giveaways, or things, that information, photos that don't go on the website will be in the newsletter.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to make sure I subscribe to that in a minute. In fact, so I've got it loaded up in the other screen. So do that, and that's where we'll hear about this upcoming book, will we? That's the best way to make sure we get a copy of that when it's ready.
Yeah. I'll keep people posted. Everything will be on the newsletter. All the extracurricular things I do besides travel will be in the newsletter, talking about all the things I do.
That's fantastic. And obviously, if anyone listening to this has got questions for you that we haven't got around to answering, they can drop that. I think you've shared your email as well there, haven't you, in there?
Yeah, so contact me anytime, on the email or on the website, or anyway you can get in touch with me. I've got a WhatsApp address and phone number there, and I think a few other ways. So yeah, please feel free to contact me. I love to hear from people.
That is fantastic. David, this has been so good. I've loved doing it. Thank you so much.
Well,
I'm going to
thank
share
you.
my screen again, just to let us to talk very quickly. I assume you can see that, just to talk very quickly about the upcoming events. In a couple of days' time, we've got long-term travel planning, getting your ducks in a row before you go. Then Stephen is doing on the 3rd of November a guide to moving to France, and on the 3rd of November as well, a sustainable travel talk. And obviously, we've got the in-person meetups as well, which I spoke about at the start. Do check them on that link there, and you'll see them in various cities across the US and some over this side of the Atlantic as well. And the Nomadic Network group tours. There's one running at the moment, I think they're in Morocco at the moment. But if you fancy coming on the road with some like-minded nomads or like-minded travelers, check them out. They're booking them now for next year. And finally, we're talking about next month's book club. A good friend of mine, Chris Oldfield, has written a book called The Dogs of Nam. In fact, he wrote it a little while ago. I think it's a couple of years old now, but it's stories from his adventures. And it's fantastic. He talks about his adventures. One of the most notable ones I remember was on the Trans-Siberian Railway. He talks about and his experience there. It's a fantastic book. So that is on the 30th of November at midday Eastern time. Right. Thank you so much for that. It's been absolutely great to connect with you here. I really appreciate these. I know David does as well. All of his contacts are in the chat there. So make sure you find him on Instagram, join that mailing list so you can get information about his books and everything else he does. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you again really soon.
Thank you. Thank you.